My mom let me struggle for years to earn my dad's love, knowing I wasn't his biological son, and now I don't know if I can forgive her. For as long as I can remember, I've felt like the black sheep in my family. My name is Name, and I'm 17 years old. I'm the oldest of 4 siblings, and I've spent most of my life trying to earn the love and affection of a man who I now know isn't my biological father. It's a harsh truth to face, but the journey I've had with my mother and the man I called Dad has been filled with emotional neglect, confusion, and ultimately a sense of abandonment that I still don't fully know how to process. My parents were young when they got married. My mother, 38 years old now, has always been a stay-at-home mom and occasionally works part-time. My dad, who is 40, works as a software developer. Growing up, I always saw my father as my role model. I wanted nothing more than to make him proud and gain his approval. But despite my best efforts, he never really acknowledged me the way he did my younger siblings. We never celebrated birthdays properly. While my younger siblings received gifts and big parties, my birthday was often just a quiet day with a simple cupcake from my mom. Christmas was especially painful. My siblings received the latest gadgets, clothing, bikes, and consoles from our extended family, while I was left with nothing but socks. I was never allowed to have friends over. I was isolated and alone most of the time, spending hours in my room, studying and trying to be perfect in school and sports to earn some kind of recognition from my father. Yet, nothing seemed to ever be enough. When I was younger, I was often excluded from family trips and vacations. While my siblings went on adventures with my father, I stayed behind with my strict grandparents. Sometimes, my mom would take me out for a day, like going to get ice cream, but these moments were rare. As I grew older, I started to work part-time jobs at the food court and grocery store to make some money and gain a sense of independence. But even then, it didn't feel like enough. The more I worked, the more disconnected I felt from my family. Despite all my efforts, I never felt seen or valued. I struggled with my mental health as I tried to juggle school, sports, and work. My mom noticed and helped me find a therapist who has been an important support to me through this. One evening, things took an unexpected turn. I came home late after work, exhausted and ready to go to bed. As I opened the door, I heard my mom arguing with my dad and aunt in the living room. The conversation paused when they noticed me standing in the doorway. My aunt, who had always been cold to me, said something that struck me like a slap in the face. "And in comes the bastard." I was stunned. I knew she didn't like me, but I didn't expect her to call me that. Anger surged through me, and I asked her to repeat what she'd said. My dad quickly stopped her, but I demanded to know what was going on. When they didn't answer right away, I asked again. Grateful for what? For being ignored? For being neglected? For being abandoned while my siblings were treated like royalty? That's when my aunt blurted it out. "You're not even his son." I froze. My mind raced. Was that true? I turned to my dad, searching his face for any sign of reassurance. Instead, he said, "I'm sorry." My heart shattered. I turned to my mom, hoping for some explanation, but she remained silent. I ran to my room, overwhelmed by the weight of what I'd just learned. That night, I lay on the floor, shaking and crying, feeling like my whole world had just collapsed. The next morning, I called in sick to work and stayed in my room, trying to process everything. I didn't know how to handle it. My whole life, I'd been trying to earn my dad's love, and now I realized I never had it to begin with. I felt like everything I had worked for, all the sacrifices, were in vain. After I posted about my experience online, I needed to escape. I couldn't bear to be at home anymore. So I called my best friend, and he picked me up. As we drove, I poured my heart out to him. He already knew about my father's indifference, but the extent of what had been happening behind closed doors shocked him. He listened, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel so alone. My best friend offered me a place to stay, and I accepted. When I returned home later, I ignored everyone. I couldn't face them. My mom came to check on me and tried to get me to come downstairs for dinner, but I refused. She kept apologizing, but I couldn't bring myself to forgive her. I couldn't understand how she had let me be treated this way for so long. Finally, we had a conversation. I demanded answers. I wanted to know why she allowed me to be neglected and why she never told me the truth about my biological father. She hesitated, but eventually she told me everything. When she was 20, she had been in a long-term relationship with a man she loved. However, after a night of drinking and arguing, she cheated on him with his best friend. Her boyfriend found out, and they broke up. Her ex then informed her parents, who disowned her, cutting her off financially. She ended up living in her car for a while. That's when she met Kay, the man I had always known as my father. He knew she was pregnant, but he didn't care. They got married, and I was born. But from the start, Kay never showed any interest in me. My mom clung to the hope that one day he would come around, but he never did. I also asked her if she had ever tried to reach out to my biological father. She admitted that she hadn't, but based on the timeline of her affair, it was likely that my biological father was the man she had cheated with. My mom had never tried to reconnect with her own family either. She explained that when she tried, they refused to meet with her, so she gave up. Then, I asked her about Kay's guilt. She explained that when I was 15, after I won a handball game and was awarded man of the match, I had been so excited to tell him about it, but he dismissed me. I cried in front of him, asking why he hated me, and he never answered. That was the moment his guilt began to consume him. My mom had convinced him to see a therapist, and for the past 2 years, he had been struggling with his feelings of guilt. I asked her if Kay had ever been abusive, and she told me that he had never abused her, although he had asked for a paternity test when my younger brother was born. She said she understood why he asked, and when the test came back positive, he apologized. The hardest question I asked was why I had been left with people who had abused me, physically, mentally, and emotionally, while they went on trips and vacations. She was shocked to hear about the abuse. I told her everything I could remember, from my grandparents physically scolding and hitting me to being locked out of the house during a trip. She cried as I shared the details, but I knew that nothing could undo the years of pain I had endured. After that conversation, I made the decision to move out. Kay and my mom begged me to stay, but I couldn't. I was done. I packed my things and left for my friend's house, where I've been staying ever since. His family has been kind and welcoming, and they have shown me a love I never experienced at home. As I reflect on everything that's happened, I realize that my family has failed me in so many ways. My mom allowed me to suffer while trying to make her life with Kay work. I'm still processing the fact that I was never really her priority. Kay too failed me. It's hard to forgive someone who's been so emotionally distant, even if he has started to show signs of remorse, but I won't forgive his family for the abuse I endured. I've started therapy again with a new counselor, and I'm working hard to rebuild my life. I've learned that my worth doesn't depend on the love or approval of people who've treated me poorly. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I'm focused on my mental health, finishing school, and finding my own path. I'm determined to move forward, no longer defined by my family's neglect. Thank you to everyone who has offered support and shared their own stories. Your kindness has given me strength in a way I never thought possible.